Hello, community. Welcome to another episode of Raptor Chain Reaction, where we are talking about enforcing copyright and trademark IP utilizing Raptorium assets. My name's Paul Mills from Raptorium Core, and here we have Hunter Schultz, who is the general badass of Raptorium.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here. So, this is something that a lot of people don't know, a lot of creators don't know, that it's one thing to use let's say, use Raptorium to protect their work, register their work on Raptorium, and get that part of the equation done. Now you have a time and date stamp that you can use to help bolster your case, if you will. However, there's another aspect to defending or protecting your work, and that is you have to use enforcement. So if you find someone who is using your work without permission, you must send some sort of use a mechanism, whether it's a cease and desist letter or a takedown notice, depending on the publication or where it's being used. You have to enforce it. You have to say, hey, you got to take it down. And there are specific reasons why you have to do that, because a court will look at how often you do that. You can lose your trademark status. You could lose it. And there are aspirin was a trademark. It was lost. Escalator was a trademark. That was lost, as far as I remember. I'm not sure if Kleenex was lost, but you have to defend it. You have to enforce it. So you have to prove that. And Raptorium's blockchain is actually the best blockchain to do it with, just like it is to protect IP in the first place. But what we're talking about here is, as you do these steps, let's say you've created a photograph. Took a photograph, you've protected it, and it's now, you've done even the copyright status. You don't have to, but you do copyright. And you find someone's using your work on a website. Well, you send the website a note saying, hey, you got to take that down, it's my work. Well, up until now, it can be kind of difficult to prove it's yours. How are you going to do that? Short of spending the $20 or $25 or whatever it is on copyright, doing the copyright office and doing the digital submission, that kind of thing. Now you have a way of using blockchain, specifically Raptorium, for very good reasons, which Paul will let you, handle that end. But now you have the ability to send the website owner, look, here's proof right here. And that should be enough for them to take it down. If it's not, then you go after the ISP and say, this is my work, here's a link to it on the Raptorium blockchain, the Asset Explorer, showing the time and date. And your client better have something earlier than that, or, and generally if the more proof, let's put it this way, the more demonstrable proof you have, time and date kind of thing, then you stand a much better chance of having the enforcement action done. What's really important, though, long term, is that you do have to continuously do this. You have to protect your IP and enforce that. So you have to show that you've done it. And so Raptorium makes that process a lot better, let's put it that way, and documenting it and proving it. At some point, you may have to do that in front of a court, and you'll be golden, essentially. You'll have it documented. So, Paul, there's some other things to keep in mind. What's your thinking?
Okay, so initially, what people would have done, or still do, is actually send a letter directly to the person that's in, or the company that's infringing the IP or the copyright, and that that works because there is there is a date and timestamp on the letter, and also when it was posted and when it was delivered, as long as you use recorded mail, and that still stands in court today. The issue these days is there's a lot of people now that issue cease and desist through means on the internet, whereas these ways of doing it can actually be altered. So, for example, if I was to send an email or a PDF or a letter in a digital format to a company that was infringing upon IP, the actual timestamp of those items can be modified. Not only that, they are based on servers that are centralized, so these messages can be tampered with in a centralized manner. So Raptorium is based on a decentralized model. There's 1,300 nodes dotted all around the world, which support the actual chain itself. And when I create an asset on the Raptorium blockchain, that provides a timestamp, which is pretty exact. You've got your date and you've got the exact time and seconds that asset was created on the chain. Now, this timestamp cannot be modified, it cannot be changed. Once it's there forever. So if I was to issue a proof of enforcement by a traditional means on the internet, then what I could do to actually enforce that proof even further would to be upload that proof into a Raptorium asset environment, which would then connect that proof to an exact timestamp that is immutable. It cannot be changed, no matter what the method was originally used to make that enforcement. So this is where it changes in comparison to traditional means. It's as good as a physical letter. And if we were to layer our IP, where you would have the IP for that particular asset, and then you would have the enforcement assets underneath to organize it as sub assets, then that would provide an environment where it would be easy to navigate for the actual IP creator, and also for a court of law in terms of proving who owns what and what was enforced as and when.
So would you create an asset? Let's say I go after someone who's using the photograph and it's XYZ website. I'd create a master asset. I'd have my master asset of the photograph itself. Would I create another master asset to show the enforcement referencing the master asset of the photograph? Is that how it would be organized?
I would do it. I would create a sub asset underneath that. So I would do the photograph as the IP, the original timestamp that comes along with that to prove who that you made it, and then the enforcement proofs could be placed underneath that as a sub asset to organize that original IP asset properly, to show proof of enforcement with the timestamp underneath it, which would then stand up in a court of law, because you could just literally provide that IP master asset and they will be able to browse the enforcements underneath of that.
And the more you document your enforcement efforts, the better off you're going to be in any court of law, basically. So just like when you first create something, the backstory is important. Why did you create this? What was it about it? The more you document that, you're better off in court, because a judge may ask both parties, okay, why did you invent this? What was the reason? Well, the real inventor is going to have one heck of a story. The thief might not have such a good story, if at all. We have the ability to record all this in an immutable way on the blockchain. And I think, Paul, it's important. I think maybe you're going to get to this, but why Raptorium?
I'm going to reiterate the fact. You create an asset. It could be a beat in music, yeah. and I save that beat as a WAV file, then if I was another person, I could then take that WAV file and the underlying timestamp of when that file was created, I could then modify, and then say it was my own. Whereas if I take that WAV file and once it's created, then put it onto the blockchain, where to protect it, then that timestamp of that WAV file would be immutable on the blockchain and it would never change. And even if someone was to take that WAV file and change the metadata to show, or to possibly show that it was made before the timestamp of that WAV file, you would have the blockchain as proof that they were, maliciously changing metadata on that file, because the original one that was originally created is right here on a Raptorium asset,
Right.
proving
And
it.
if you're an attorney, for the actual owner, you can pick apart the fact that, that file they're introducing has false metadata, and here's how you do it, Your Honor. Oh, well, you can't do that with the blockchain. And right there, you've created enough doubt about the claim, being made, that the original owner is going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, any attorney would love that. And you probably wouldn't even go to trial. They'd just settle if it got to that point, because they wouldn't. Well, anyway, they'd settle.
I think, Hunter, it'd be nice if you could touch on some of the reasons why this method of protecting IP would actually stand up in a court of law. I know you've explored this previously.
When you're going to introduce blockchain's increasingly being recognized as admissible in courts. They're considering it. It is not quite there yet. And part of the reason is you can poke holes in some of the asset creation methods. And we've explored this numerous times. California DMV and others have some problems, and that is when you're creating an asset using a smart contract. That's a problem. And if you're an attorney, you can poke holes in that. It is not as secure as what Raptorium has. So, we're dealing right now with the gold standard, if you will. That's U.S. Federal Rules of Evidence. And Raptorium is looking increasingly like the only blockchain that can even come close to matching that. And that's an important point. So if I'm an attorney, I'd love that. Now, when it comes to copyright, copyrights you can't lose the copyright. They will expire 70 years after creation. In some cases, it can go to 92, if I recall. But if you don't enforce your copyright, it can lose value over time. Let's say someone wanted to buy a book that you wrote 20 years ago, and you weren't enforcing it, and there are copies of it out there online or whatever. It's very tough to go back and say, it's worth this much money. You will essentially be losing the financial value. So it's different from trademark. Trademark is that's something you can lose. As I mentioned, like aspirin was a trademark. So what you have to do there, you have to use it continuously. You have to show that it's been used wherever. And so you can put it on your website. You can show these things. You use the blockchain for that. But you have to be able to show continuous use. And it's your duty to protect your trademark. Courts expect trademark owners to take reasonable steps to prevent unauthorized use of trademarks. And if you don't, they may not support future infringement claims. So these are all reasons why you need to be aware of this. And for smaller IP owners, then there are a lot of creators out there on YouTube TikTok, Instagram. Doubtful they even know. So it's important that it's not just protecting the work, but it's enforcing it and protecting. It's initially protecting it in terms of copyright and registering it, so to speak. It's a whole nother thing that you got to protect it. So you have to be able to show that you are protecting it in addition to the initial protection. And a lot of small creators don't know that. So IP owners have a challenge. And that challenge is the fact they don't have legal teams, they don't necessarily have the budget, and that find low-cost ways of doing this and show enforcement. And one of the first things they have to do is have a clear license agreement for their IP, whether you retain all rights or whatever. So that's stage one, if you will, of enforcement. So why don't you take over that end and give people an idea what they need to do.
So when issuing an asset to prove IP, you could actually choose one of the many templates available online, which stipulates, fair use of the asset, or how you would like the legal side of things for that asset to be. You can then attach that to the asset when you create the IP master asset. Then when you document your enforcements below that, then any judge in a court can then look at what the master asset shows, the legal side of it that you've stipulated for the license agreement for that asset, and show why you actually made that enforcement, which is below it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good when you're doing your enforcement, which is through the next step, which is the low-cost enforcement options, which are cease and desist and takedown notices. So the more you can reference with an ISP or some publisher, the quicker they're going to take action. And the licensing part of what you just talked about is number one. It was a clear violation of my license agreement. Here it is. And again, documentation helps. Those efforts will go a long way towards protecting your IP. If someone's truly being egregious about it, you can then go a step up, either to the hosting company, or even the hosting company's ISP. You can go up the food chain, at least online. Those takedown notices and cease and desist letters are the ones that you're going to put as sub-assets on the blockchain to prove what you're doing, which the court will like. And then there's something else that probably needs to be talked about, and that is, how do you know someone's infringing it? Okay, so we now have the last part of the equation. How do you know when someone is, abusing your work, infringing on your work? Well, there are monitoring ways of monitoring things. You can do simple things like reverse image searches. There are IP monitoring services. You can do simple searches on Google. You can do it even with AI. So there are numbers of ways that you just regularly check, and it's a good idea to document those. You don't have to put all that on the blockchain. Just make a note, a diary, days that you set aside, once a week, once a month, whatever. And you document when you did that. I searched Google, I searched AI, I searched this, and nothing came up. Okay, fine. You've made the effort. You keep that log for the diary, if you will, IP protection diary, for a year. And if nothing shows up, fine. But what you do at the end of the year is that you print the PDF file and load that up in the blockchain as a sub-asset. So you can document, again, maybe it's monthly. It depends on how much you have to protect. But again, the more you show, the better off you're going to be. So you're in good shape if you're you're making a note of it, writing it down, you're done. And there you are, Paul.
And there we are. I hope this week's Raptor Chain Reaction video was informative and helpful for creators and IP issuers, and even people in the legal industry. We feel that Raptorium really can help and innovate this sector and provide new use cases and solutions that can really improve IP protection and proof of IP moving forward into the future, as mass adoption of blockchain seems quite prevalent and imminent, especially with the new administration. So please don't forget to follow us on X, that's at Raptorium. We're also on Instagram and Threads, and please give this video a like at the bottom and click the subscribe button with the little bell to be kept up to date with any more Raptor Chain Reaction videos from myself and Hunter, or any more Raptorium weekly updates, or anything else on the Raptorium YouTube channel. You can also become a member if you would like to support us and help us continue our mission to bring new use cases and content, and to help the Raptorium blockchain get out there to the masses, I suppose. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here and bring this to you today, and we will be back next time for another Raptor Chain Reaction video. I have been Paul Mills. He has been
Hunter Schultz.
Hunter Schultz.
Hunter Schultz. Yep.
And we are out. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.